Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In the dimly lit auditorium, anticipation crackled like an imminent lightning strike as eager performers feverishly rehearsed their parts. Scripts whispered like incantations. Amidst this talent hive, a solitary figure stood out, though not for his looks. Hunkered in faded attire, Kelvin, whose acting dreams withered with each rejection, had grown all too familiar with disappointment. Kelvin's gaze drifted to the waiting script in his hands, a heavy weight of responsibility bearing down on his shoulders with every passing second. He knew this audition could be his big break, but the pressure was overwhelming. Financial worries loomed over him, the kind that creep into your bones, making every breath a struggle for survival. His nerves were shot, yet he realized this opportunity might not come again. When invited to take the stage, he took a trembling step forward, embracing the blinding light of the spotlight. As he finished, a silence fell over the room.
"Thank you,"
the director said, her expression unreadable.
"We'll be in touch."
Kelvin nodded, trying to hide his disappointment as he gathered his things and left the theater. Outside, the bustling city streets seemed to mock his dreams, reminding him of how small and insignificant he felt in the grand scheme of things. Days passed, and Kelvin had all but given up hope when his phone rang. It was the theater's casting director, asking him to come in for a callback. Excitement coursed through his veins as he rushed to prepare, determined to give it his all. When he arrived at the theater, Kelvin was surprised to find only a handful of other actors waiting. The director greeted them with an enigmatic smile. "Thank you all for coming back," she said. "We've made some changes to the production, and we'd like to see how you handle them." She handed out new scripts, and Kelvin's eyes widened as he read the character description. The role he had initially auditioned for had been rewritten as a woman named Billy.
"But
Kelvin began, confusion evident in his voice. The director cut him off.
"We're looking for someone who can truly embody this character, regardless of their own gender. Are you up for the challenge?"
Kelvin hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He had come too far to back down now. As he read through the lines, something strange happened. The character's voice seemed to flow naturally from him, as if Billy had been waiting to emerge all along. When he finished, the director's eyes gleamed with interest. "That was unexpected," she said. "I'd like to see more. Can you come back tomorrow? Dress the part this time." Kelvin left the theater in a daze, his mind reeling from the bizarre turn of events. He spent the evening scouring thrift stores and borrowing clothes from female friends, piecing together an outfit that he hoped would pass muster. The next morning, Kelvin stood before his bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the person staring back at him. He had applied makeup with shaky hands, following online tutorials as best he could. The floral dress he wore felt foreign against his skin, but as he smoothed it down, a strange sense of rightness washed over him. At the theater, the director nodded approvingly at his appearance. "Much better," she said. "Now, let's see Billy come to life." As Kelvin began to perform, something shifted within him. The world fell away, and he wasn't just playing a character anymore. He was Billy, with all her hopes, fears, and complexities. When the scene ended, he found himself breathless, as if awakening from a vivid dream. The director stood, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Congratulations," she said.
"You've got the part."
Kelvin's joy was tempered by the director's next words.
"But I need you to understand something. This isn't just a role.
To truly bring Billy to life, you need to become her. I want you to live as Billy full-time throughout the rehearsal process and the run of the show. Are you willing to do that?" The request was unprecedented, bordering on absurd. Yet, as Kelvin considered it, he felt a flutter of excitement in his chest. He thought of how natural it had felt to embody Billy, how alive he had felt in those moments on stage.
"I'll do it,"
he heard himself say, his voice barely above a whisper. The following weeks were a whirlwind of change. Kelvin, now Billy, threw herself into the role with a dedication that surprised even her. She worked with a vocal coach to soften her voice, practiced walking in heels until her feet ached, and spent hours perfecting her makeup techniques. The physical transformation was challenging, but it was the emotional journey that truly shook Billy to her core. As she immersed herself in Billy's world, she began to question everything she had ever known about herself. The more time she spent as Billy, the more she realized that this wasn't just a character, it was a part of her that had been waiting to emerge. Rehearsals were intense, with the director pushing Billy to dig deeper into the character's psyche. There were moments of frustration and self-doubt, but also moments of exhilaration when everything clicked into place. One day, as Billy was leaving the theater after a particularly grueling rehearsal, she caught her reflection in a store window. She barely recognized the person staring back at her, a woman with flowing brown hair, wearing a navy blue dress that hugged her curves. For the first time, she felt a sense of wholeness, as if the pieces of her identity had finally aligned. As opening night approached, Billy's confidence grew. She had mastered the art of applying her makeup, choosing outfits that flattered her figure, and moving with a grace that felt increasingly natural. Her castmates, initially skeptical of the director's unorthodox approach, had come to accept and support her transformation. The night before the first performance, Billy lay awake in bed, her mind racing. She thought about Kelvin, the person she had been just a few short months ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then. As she drifted off to sleep, she wondered if Kelvin would ever return, or if Billy had always been her true self, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Opening night arrived in a flurry of excitement and nerves. Billy stood backstage, her heart pounding as she listened to the murmur of the audience. Her burgundy gown shimmered under the dim lights, and she took a deep breath, centering herself in the character she had come to know so intimately. As the curtain rose, Billy stepped into the spotlight, and something magical happened. The boundary between actor and character dissolved completely. She wasn't playing Billy anymore. She was Billy, in every sense of the word. The performance was a triumph. Billy moved the audience to laughter and tears, her portrayal so raw and honest that it left them breathless. As she took her final bow, the theater erupted in a standing ovation. Flowers rained down on the stage, and Billy felt a surge of joy unlike anything she had ever experienced. In the days that followed, reviews poured in, praising Billy's groundbreaking performance. Critics marveled at the depth and authenticity she brought to the role, unaware of the profound journey that had led to this moment. As the run of the show continued, Billy found herself at a crossroads. The agreement had been to live as Billy only for the duration of the production, but the thought of going back to her old life filled her with dread. She realized that Billy wasn't just a character she was playing. It was who she truly was. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, the director found Billy sitting alone in her dressing room, still in her emerald green costume.
"You've exceeded all my expectations,"
the director said, her voice uncharacteristically gentle.
But I sense there's something troubling you.
Billy looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. I don't know if I can go back, she whispered. To being Kelvin, I mean. This feels right, like I've finally found myself. The director nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes.
Sometimes the roles we play reveal truths about ourselves that we never knew existed. What you do with that truth is up to you.
In that moment, Billy made a decision. She would continue her journey as Billy long after the final curtain fell. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, both personal and professional, but for the first time in her life, she felt truly alive, truly herself. The weeks that followed were a blur of performances, each one more exhilarating than the last. Billy poured her heart and soul into every show, knowing that each performance brought her closer to the end of this chapter and the beginning of a new one. As the final performance approached, Billy found herself reflecting on the incredible journey she had undergone. She thought about the struggling actor she had been, the unexpected opportunity that had changed everything, and the profound self-discovery that had followed. On closing night, the energy in the theater was electric. Billy stood backstage, smoothing down her shimmering silver gown, her brown hair cascading over her shoulders. She could hear the excited murmur of the audience, the rustle of programs, the quiet hush as the lights dimmed. As she stepped onto the stage for the last time, Billy felt a sense of peace wash over her. This wasn't an ending, but a beginning. The curtain rose, and she delivered her first line, her voice strong and clear. For the next 2 hours, she lived and breathed as Billy, pouring every ounce of her being into the performance. When the final scene came to a close, and Billy delivered her last line, there was a moment of profound silence. Then, as if a dam had broken, the audience erupted into thunderous applause. Roses rained down on the stage as Billy and her castmates took their bows, tears of joy and bittersweet emotion streaming down their faces. After the curtain fell for the last time, Billy made her way back to her dressing room. As she sat at her vanity, slowly removing her stage makeup, she caught sight of herself in the mirror. The person looking back at her was neither Kelvin nor the character she had played. It was simply Billy, in all her complexity and authenticity. There was a knock at the door, and the director entered, her eyes shining with pride. "You were magnificent," she said, placing a hand on Billy's shoulder. "What you've achieved here goes beyond acting. You've discovered a truth about yourself, and you've had the courage to embrace it." Billy nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The director continued, "I know our agreement was for you to live as Billy only for the duration of the show, but I want you to know that whatever you decide to do next, you have my full support." As the director left, Billy turned back to the mirror. She thought about the life that lay ahead of her, the challenges she would face, the explanations she would have to give, the relationships that would be tested. But she also thought about the sense of wholeness she now felt, the joy of finally being true to herself. In that moment, Billy made a decision. She would step out into the world as her authentic self, no longer bound by the constraints of a role or the expectations of others. It wouldn't be easy, but she knew in her heart that it was the only path forward. As she left the theater that night, still dressed in her silver gown, Billy took a deep breath of the cool night air. The city streets, once a reminder of her struggles and disappointments, now seemed full of possibility. She was no longer a struggling actor playing a part. She was Billy, embarking on the most important role of her life, being herself. The days and weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change and adjustment. Billy had to navigate the complexities of coming out to friends, family, and colleagues. Some were supportive from the start, embracing her with open arms and admiration for her bravery. Others struggled to understand, requiring time and patience as they came to terms with her transition. Billy's parents, initially shocked by the news, needed time to process the change. Her mother, after the initial surprise, became her strongest ally, accompanying her to doctor's appointments and helping her build a new wardrobe. Her father took longer to come around, but eventually, seeing the happiness and confidence radiating from his child, he too offered his support. Professionally, Billy faced both opportunities and obstacles. Some directors, impressed by her groundbreaking performance and the depth of her commitment, were eager to work with her. Others, unfortunately, were less open-minded, and Billy found herself facing discrimination and closed doors. Undeterred, Billy channeled her experiences into her art. She began writing a one-woman show about her journey, pouring her heart and soul into every word. The process was cathartic, allowing her to explore the complex emotions and revelations she had experienced over the past months. As she worked on her show, Billy also became involved in advocacy work, using her platform to raise awareness about transgender issues in the theater community. She spoke at industry events, sharing her story and pushing for more inclusive casting practices and diverse representation on stage. One sunny afternoon, as Billy was leaving a meeting with a potential producer for her show, she bumped into an old friend from her acting classes. Mark did a double take, his eyes widening in recognition.
"Kelvin?"
he asked, uncertain. Billy smiled, smoothing down her floral sundress. "It's Billy now," she said, her voice soft but confident. Mark's surprise quickly gave way to a warm smile.
"Billy,"
he repeated, as if testing out the name. "It suits you. You look happy." They decided to catch up over coffee, and as Billy shared her story, she could see the genuine interest and support in Mark's eyes. It was moments like these, connections rekindled and strengthened, that reinforced Billy's belief in the power of authenticity. As summer turned to fall, Billy's one-woman show was finally ready for its debut. She stood backstage on opening night, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nerves. Her crimson dress seemed to glow under the stage lights as she took deep, calming breaths. This performance was different from any she had given before. There was no character to hide behind, no script written by someone else. This was her story, raw and real, laid bare for the audience to see. As she stepped onto the stage, Billy felt a surge of strength. She looked out at the sea of faces, friends, family, colleagues, and strangers, all there to hear her truth. And then she began to speak, her voice clear and strong. For the next 90 minutes, Billy held the audience spellbound. She took them on her journey of self-discovery, from the struggling actor to the woman standing before them. There were moments of laughter, moments of tears, and moments of profound silence as her words resonated with the crowd. When the show ended, the applause was deafening. Billy stood on stage, tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and acceptance. As she looked out at the audience, she saw her parents in the front row, their faces shining with pride. She saw her castmates from the play that had started it all, cheering loudly. And she saw countless faces of people she didn't know, moved by her story and inspired by her courage. In that moment, Billy realized that her journey had come full circle. What had started as a role in a play had become the catalyst for her to step into her true self. She had faced fear, doubt, and discrimination, but she had also found strength, love, and acceptance, both from others and, most importantly, from herself. As the applause continued, Billy took a deep bow, her heart full of gratitude. She had embarked on this journey to find her voice as an actor, but in the process, she had found so much more. She had found herself. The success of Billy's one-woman show opened up new doors in her career. Theater companies and film producers, impressed by her talent and her powerful story, began offering her diverse and challenging roles. Billy approached each opportunity with enthusiasm, grateful for the chance to continue growing as an artist and as a person. One particularly exciting project came in the form of a groundbreaking television series that aimed to tell authentic stories about the transgender experience. Billy was cast as one of the lead characters, a role that allowed her to draw from her own experiences while also stretching her acting abilities. As she immersed herself in this new role, Billy found herself reflecting on how far she had come. She thought about the scared and confused Kelvin who had walked into that first audition, never imagining the transformative journey that lay ahead. She thought about the moment she first truly saw herself as Billy, and the courage it had taken to embrace that truth. On set, Billy formed close bonds with her castmates, many of whom were also transgender actors. They shared stories, offered support, and celebrated each other's successes. It was a nurturing environment that allowed Billy to continue exploring and expressing her identity both on and off screen. As the series gained popularity, Billy found herself in the public eye more than ever before. She used this platform to continue her advocacy work, speaking out about the importance of representation and the need for more opportunities for transgender actors in the entertainment industry. One day, after a particularly emotional scene, Billy's co-star found her sitting quietly in her trailer, lost in thought. "You okay?" they asked, concern evident in their voice. Billy looked up, a soft smile on her face. "I was just thinking about how surreal this all is," she said, gesturing around her. "A few years ago, I was struggling to land any role, let alone one that truly represented me. And now I'm here, telling stories that matter, being my authentic self. It's overwhelming in the best possible way." Her co-star nodded understanding. "You've come a long way," they said. "And you've helped pave the way for others to follow. That's something to be proud of." As the first season of the show wrapped up, Billy found herself at another crossroads. The series had been renewed for a second season, but she had also received an offer to return to the stage in a bold, gender-blind production of a classic play. Billy spent days weighing her options, considering not just the career implications, but also what each path would mean for her personal growth. In the end, she decided to take on the stage role, feeling drawn back to the medium where her journey had begun. The rehearsal process was intense but exhilarating. Billy threw herself into the character, a complex role traditionally played by men. She worked closely with the director to bring a fresh perspective to the part, infusing it with her unique experiences and insights. As opening night approached, Billy felt a familiar mix of excitement and nerves. But this time, there was also a deep sense of confidence. She knew who she was, both on and off the stage. She had fought hard for this identity, this career, this life. On the night of the premiere, Billy stood backstage, smoothing down her tailored suit. The costume was a nod to the character's traditional portrayal, but Billy had worked with the designers to add subtle feminine touches that felt true to her interpretation. As she waited for her cue, Billy closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. She thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment, the struggles, the triumphs, the moments of doubt, and the moments of clarity. She thought about Kelvin and how that lost and struggling actor had found his way to becoming the woman she was today. The stage manager's voice came through her earpiece, calling places. Billy opened her eyes, a sense of calm settling over her. She was ready to step out onto that stage, to inhabit this character, to tell this story, ready to continue pushing boundaries and challenging expectations, ready to be Billy in all her complexity and authenticity. As the curtain rose, Billy took a deep breath and stepped into the spotlight. In that moment, she was more than an actor playing a role. She was a woman who had found her truth, living it boldly and unapologetically. And as she delivered her first line, her voice strong and clear, Billy knew that this was exactly where she was meant to be. The performance was a triumph, earning Billy standing ovations and critical acclaim. But more than the external validation, it was the inner sense of peace and fulfillment that meant the most to her. She had come full circle, returning to the stage not as someone playing a part, but as her true self, using her art to challenge perceptions and open hearts. As Billy took her final bow on opening night, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the journey that had brought her here, for the people who had supported her along the way, and for the strength she had found within herself to embrace her truth. The applause washed over her, and Billy smiled, her heart full. This wasn't an ending, but another beautiful beginning in a life that had become more rich and authentic than she ever could have imagined. As she looked out at the audience, Billy knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to face them, as an actor, as an advocate, and most importantly, as herself.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!